welcome to LadiesCon 2021. This is a hybrid show this year, meaning we'll have an in-person component and an online component, which you're watching right now. And you can check out ladiescon.com to see our entire schedule, including our guests, our vendors, and our panels. So this is Anime Clubs and Teen Mental Health, and so I am going to turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Atla Hrafney. I am a comics creator, editor, and local organizer here in Iceland. I'm the chairman of the Icelandic Comic Society, as well as a acquisition and a general editor at Highworks Comics. And I've been working in comics now for, I think, 7 years or so. And I currently run the local anime club for Reykjavik City Library. And that's the topic of today's panel.
Hi, my name is Viktoría Söring. I am also a comics creator and artist and writer and all that. And I'm a student at the University of Iceland in English. Yeah. And also I am part of the anime club as well. Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Hannah Anthea Armada, and I am a professional illustrator / ongoing comics maker, as Atla would probably insist me to say. My art diploma in Fjölbrautaskóla Reykjavik, and you can find me on Instagram at that grumpy Asian. And yes, I'm also with the anime club.
Oh yeah, I also forgot. You can find me at Blue Bonnet Milk at Instagram. Sorry.
And you're both, of course, when we say part of the anime club, you're staff members rather than club members.
We are considered as the big sisters, senpais, if you will, of the club.
That's right. So I guess I could introduce a little bit what the anime club itself is. The anime club is effectively an after-school program that we host currently 1 day a week and soon to be 2 days a week. Where we are basically working with the municipal library here in Reykjavik. And it is for teens 12 to 16, where we basically just like get them all together in the teen-specific section of the library and allow them to basically interact with one another, socialize. Under kind of the theme of anime, we put anime shows on. We have a small curated private library just for these kids that we've gotten through several donations from a couple of countries and a couple of very lovely people. And, activities that we've been doing with them, like smaller workshops about cosplay, about art, about like all these different things. And we basically just like, it's a long-term sort of after-school engagement and socialization effort with a very specific group of kids, which generally, when we talk about them, we generally talk about them as at-risk youth, because we have, on accident, and we'll get into it, on accident, we've been able to engage with nearly exclusively fairly at-risk youth. There, with that being like kids that are at risk of self-harm or suicidal ideation, isolated kids that don't really go to any other clubs or don't really have a lot of other friends, queer youth, mentally ill youth, like all of those things. So it's a very unique experience where on one hand, we are allowing them to experience like an actual like activity club and stuff like that. But underneath the surface, it's actually very much a sort of evolving mental health effort for, 30 to 40 kids at a time. And some of the things that we have really seen and really experienced is that when we started this club, we actually didn't start it necessarily. We adopted it. We actually took it from, there's a lovely lady who works with us called Hrafney, and her daughter really loved anime, and she works at the library. And her daughter loves anime, is very lonely, and she said, I will make an anime club for you. And she did. And we came there as guests for the very first day. And I noticed that she did not know what anime really was, because she's like 55. She's lovely, incredible, love being around her. Society coming in, the Icelandic Comic Society coming in and sort of playing ball a little bit, developing it a little bit, and teaching the actual staff at the library to be like, here's how you engage with anime, here's what you need to know, here's how you like. And as we took it upon ourselves to actually educate them, we realized the scope, not of the project itself, but of the kids that we were getting in. Because one of the things, and this goes for any sort of location, one of the things you'll hear often from municipal workers is how difficult it is to get these exact specific kind of kids, like the mentally ill youth, the self-harmers, like the socially isolated kids. These are by kind of definition highly isolated. And my sister currently works in kind of the upper echelon of those like city municipal workers. And I remember her saying to me, you have gotten the exact group that I've never been able to get. And that's the only type of people that come to your club. So it's an extremely vulnerable group. And that, I think, that element of mental health is sort of what we started to value, that we were able to actually engage these kids and able to socialize them in a really, really unique setting that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do, right? And it's been a challenge, I feel, Hannah and Victoria. It's been quite a challenge to sort of realize the scope of it, because when we were starting, we really didn't know how difficult it would get.
Well, I mean, yes, because a lot of these kids are maybe the only like a LGBT person who's out in their school and being bullied for it, or they might have problems at home because their parents, like a lot of these kids are, LGBTQIA, and a lot of them are neurodivergent. These kinds of kids gravitate towards anime in a way that I also did. And I'm assuming that I don't know about you, Atla and Hannah, but I'm assuming that you guys did too in some way.
As a form of escapism, as a lot of LGBT plus youth would do.
Yeah.
Like it felt like a sense of belonging without having to actually socialize. And that's kind of like what a lot of the kids craved, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So we have like a sort of an understanding of where these kids are at in their lives, how alone they must be feeling, because at least me personally, I was that alone. I was that, I had friends, but it wasn't, it's a very specific type of isolation to just feel like an outsider, no matter who you're with. And which is why it was so fulfilling for me to be in this program, is that this is a space where these kids who are usually on the outside of every social circle that they encounter, this is a space where they can all be with people who are sort of on the same page as them and want friends like them. And I really like that. I think that's very important to so that you're able to like develop healthy relationships and social skills, where you're not just being constantly judged and judged for liking like a nerdy thing, or for how you speak, or for how I don't know, if you don't look into people's eyes or something. It's a little bit hard to articulate why it is so special and how amazing it is that this did happen on accident, because it's just like a thing that people that had these difficulties gravitate towards.
It's, like you said, it's such a inclusive group. And also the fact that like the three of us, we have such a knowledge about the youth nowadays, that we've encountered enough of them that we can understand, and we've been there, right? So we can definitely relate to these kids, seeing as, at least for me, it was more like I wish I had like someone like Atla or Viktoria or Dante, our other staff member, but to like, watch over me, even if just for like a week, as like a nice physical escape from like, verbal abuse at home, or just being alone in school because you're somehow weird, because you're especially someone who's POC. I know I don't have a camera right now, but I am Asian and I am an immigrant to Iceland, and I immigrated fairly young, but already conscious about racism and like conscious about how different I looked from the other kids. It didn't really hit me until like 2-3 years until that I moved here, that I was alone, that I didn't have anyone that could like relate to my struggles. And like I would put like an example of like poverty here is completely like worlds different from like poverty in Philippines. But I forgot to say that. Yes, I am Filipino. And it's like the poverty here is, yes, I can understand that it's like it's such a fucking menace, to be honest, especially when you have a lot of friends that aren't well off. But the gravity of it is that I literally would like get scolded for taking money out of my own piggy bank because I didn't even know that my mother was using that money for food. Like it was that bad. Like I wouldn't have allowances even. Like I heard a lot of my friends had allowances and I didn't even have that kind of thing. So it's one of those things, especially as like a child, that you're realizing, like no one can really like relate to this. But in like the anime club, it was such an opening experience for at least me, and how many kids are like dealing with so much home like problems that they don't even like tell anyone else outside of anime club sometimes. And I'm very humbled that we as like the staff members like feel that we're trusted by these kids to like even look up as like parental figures, as we all call Atla as like the mother figure of this so-called cult that we are in. So yeah, like these kids look up to us, and we really just want them to, you know, we want to show them that there is a light outside the bitter hell that is home sometimes. So,
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think it is about anime in particular that sort of creates this response in kids that you know helps to center this welcoming environment? And I realize this may not be a question that has one answer, that it may be very, very broad for all of the kids that you work with, but what have you noticed in your work with them?
So if I could take that one real quick.
Yeah.
What I find with anime, and it's important to understand that the specific, anime is often marketed towards teens specifically, and even if at its most kind of violent or deep,
mature.
yeah, at its most mature, it's usually made for younger or older teenagers. So already the market and the storytelling and the visuals are very made. We put on anime every week, regardless of what it is, and we get to kind of view it in the background every so often. We're all so busy we can't watch it. We're all running around and doing stuff, but occasionally we'll be able to pick up on whatever they love or like. And the writing that seemed so very, for a couple of the titles, the writing that seemed so engaging and poignant and beautiful to me now seems very made for teenagers, shall we say. Still very good, still very compelling, but definitely made for the demographic that's supposed to be watching it. Like, when I watch One Piece, I'm like, this is not for me anymore. Like,
if I could add on to that, I think the reason, and it is directly connected to the fact that this is content that is suitable for teenagers a lot of the times. Not all the time. You do have to. There are some ones that we don't really feel comfortable putting on, and like we know that they're probably watching this at home. Not this, but like the more adult stuff, the more violent stuff. But we don't do that in the public space because it's not appropriate for them. But I think a problem with a lot of like me super high, and you jump straight into shows like Riverdale and all those CW shows that are like supposedly for teenagers, because it is very like
Edgy. It's very
yeah,
edgy,
it's edgy.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's too, not that it's too edgy, but it's too drastic of a jump.
Yeah.
You don't go from watching H2O into watching like Euphoria, and it's it's not there's
no transition. Yeah, there's no transition towards that. Like, you don't go from like Hannah Montana to Dexter in like one leap.
Exactly. It's really I'm losing my thread here. You don't go from Hannah Montana to Dexter. I think the thing about anime is that it does have those like childlike qualities in like the humor, and maybe the visuals are more interesting to somebody who is like 14 and is still kind of immature. But it also doesn't usually shy away from like sort of more heavier topics, which is very important for kids those age to learn about and to start to process, because a lot of these kids are going through things that aren't typically talked about in other media, unless it's in like a CW kind of glamorous sort of way, instead of just addressing it honestly. You know, that's kind of my thought process. It doesn't like, of course, it always depends on what show you're talking to, or talking about. But in general, there's more of a selection of material that is not going to talk down to you while not being too triggering to watch, I guess.
That's also a really good point. Because
yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
No, you keep going. I'm finished with my point. I'm just
I mean, to add on to like both of you guys' points, it's like, for example, with Atla and the way she like usually like watches over the kids, and your point of going from like really childish shows with low consequences to like very mature shows that are definitely aimed at like younger adults than anything, with real life consequences that like, oh, if you murder someone, you might be going to jail. We don't know. Sometimes you can get away with it, but that's not a good idea. Like, you know, it's the way that I see with these kids, and from what I'm seeing in like media nowadays, I'm seeing this whole crave for socializing, even though like we have like extroverts, introverts, we all crave that long-term connection with someone that these characters, these anime characters, really like portray in media. And I know it's a very weird way of romanticizing friendship, and how like, oh, it can last forever as long as we have a mission together or some sort. Like, for example, in Boku no Hero Academia, there's like an instant connection between the class members, even though they have never met before. You know, like that's not a thing here. That's not a thing here specifically in Iceland either, because here everyone's had their own like, you know, childhood friends. They've lived there in that specific town for quite some time, and then, you know, they've kind of been forced to be friends with the same people for the last like 5 years. That's not a thing in this country, as from what I've seen, as someone who's been an outsider for quite a while. And what I see in these kids is that, you know, their favorites are like Boku no Hero Academia, One Piece, Naruto, Demon Slayer. These are all centered around like your relationship around people and what your goals could do with the same people. What those goals, like the tiniest things that you do could affect someone else. Like with Asian media, at least, they're very manipulative in a way that's like good, I feel like, because they're like putting in these tiny little tidbits of, oh yeah, if you, let's say, get forced into a mission with someone that you didn't even know and is a huge crybaby, but you end up really liking them because they're actually super fucking nice to your sister, and like they're very protective of themselves and everyone around them, and you see how much honor there is to that personality. Like, a lot of these kids look up to that kind of idealization of, I want someone to be with me for the right reasons. And I feel like with these types of shows, they're learning how to navigate the world without having to ask for parents, or, you know, like actually having to go outside and dealing with other people, because, you know, there's consequences to that. And that's one of the reasons why I think anime is such an escapism. It is such a big like coin to learning, which is why I never understood why adults really didn't like don't think like cartoons are like for children. Like, yeah, teenagers are still kids, you know, like,
Mhm.
but
And
yeah.
sorry, I was
Yeah, keep going.
So I was just going to point out that as well, you know, when we talk about what appeals when it comes to the anime club specifically, you also have to keep in mind that the space that we have, specifically in these libraries, have teen and kid specific spaces. They have isolated areas where they're able to just be themselves. So when we actually have our club, we have something called the Orchid or the OK, which is just a name of basically two large rooms, kind of open areas where they're able to just be themselves. And kids and teens are really the only people that enter this space, plus like, you know, like somebody like staff member and such.
I mean, yeah, it's a kid-friendly space. They have like a lot of other like community stuff that, since it is a community library, they usually hold like children's stuff in that specific part of the library.
Mm-hmm. And we have, you know, like pin machines, we have a 3D printer, and we have, you know, a vinyl printer. So we're able to give them a lot of tools and a lot of things. And we have, you know, like art and a drawing tablet and like, or a drawing space and stuff like that. So we're able to really give them access to a lot of free resources that they maybe don't have access to anywhere else. And that means that they're able to, on top of being able to socialize, they're able to actually engage creativity with your own creativity and with the activities that we create on top of that, with the resources that we have access to. Like we took a bunch of old discarded manga that the library itself had said we're going to throw these out, and we took them in and we made a giant like mural out of the pages and panels that we found to be interesting from these old mangas, where we just like cut them out, made them all neat and clean, placed them together, and
It's a great idea overall. It's just the hearing you say we're cutting up these manga books really hurts my soul.
Like, but yeah, these were books that were gonna get discarded anyway, and so, and we had them for the comic society itself had them for a couple of months, and we hadn't really found a use for them because they were mostly, you know, like a little bit decayed and whatnot. But being able to actually engage with that creative side of you, we have a Discord as well where they're able to talk to each other and stuff like that. And I think on the Discord itself, because, you know, like the anime club is 90 minutes a week, and on the Discord itself, we're able to see much better the fruits of our labors and the socializing aspect. As an example, we have a very active art corner where they just show their art, and they'll just show what they're making, and it's always genuinely good stuff. And because they're there weekly, and because they're there engaging with their own creativity weekly, we're able to see massive leaps, like week to week. In like 6 months, somebody goes from drawing okay, yeah, it was pretty cute, to actually engaging a style, to engaging like, how do I, you know, like prompts and all these things, and like figuring out how they want to draw, and just seeing that, I think, in and of itself, because they're engaging with art every week, different forms of art, different types of art, and so they take that all in. And on top of that, we have kind of a mental health channel where they're able to tell each other, just like I had a bad day, or in serious cases, like I've had trouble stopping self-harm. That's been something that they talk about very frequently.
In my opinion, it does need to be like moderated a bit better, because like, as much as like, just to be real and honest, I haven't been paying much attention to the chat, because like
No,
there's we've added quite a bit of kids into the chat, like, or this channel that we have, and this so-called cult that we are building is filled with a lot of kids, and a lot of kids with a lot of problems. So and a lot of opinions. So if it's not moderated correctly in the venting channel, it could do more damage than good. So
Right.
like I really do think we need a
Which
better
we need to-
moderation.
Yeah, we
Which
need to
is
get
better-
somebody Discord savvy, because at least me and
Yeah.
Hanna, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
Atla, but
No.
I've
I
never
don't
been
even have nitro, my guy.
for it.
I don't even
No,
have
exactly.
like
Well,
none of the cool features.
me and Dante actually do. Me and Dante actually do read every chat every single day. So that is something me and Dante, who is currently not available, but is another of our staff member, we take care of in that regard and monitor it very closely. So if there's serious cases where somebody is like, hey, I don't think I want to be alive anymore, which does happen on occasion, because these are very, very fragile. They often have, we always try to come in and be like, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? You know, I'll maybe report a couple of things. But I think one of the benefits that we're seeing, especially with that venting channel, though it needs to be moderated at all times, there is an element where they will start to talk to each other about the benefits of somebody will be like, hey, I've had trouble stopping for the last couple of weeks, and I feel really bad. And somebody else, and these will be multiple people, these will be multiple different kids, independently, will come in and be like, there's a TikTok that I found that's really helped me. And it's really helped me. You know, I've tried fidget toys, I've tried keeping an app, you know. So they've talked to one another and actually engaged, like, hey, how are you feeling? And they actually and like they're actually engaging with one another and encouraging one another. And when those, you know, high risk things happen where they say, I don't know if I want to be alive anymore, we will of course privately reach out and be like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Do we need to call someone? Do we need to let everyone know what's going on? Do we need to tell your parents, like, are you okay? While we're taking care of that in a private channel, we will always see kids independently come in and be like, hey, don't, I love you. You know, you're really cool and you're really good. And so I think just having that support network, especially when it is curated by somebody who's able to come in and be like, hey, that's not okay, or like, you shouldn't talk like that, or let's simmer down with this, who's able to moderate it in respectful ways, we're able to create a really engaging, both with the club and outside the club, like just helping these kids understand that they're not alone, which I think is one of the most powerful things you can do for these types of kids.
What have you found particularly helpful in the process? And I know from what you're saying that it wasn't necessarily the most intentional process all the time, but the process of creating this safe space. You know, what resources have been helpful to you, and what have you learned in curating this space?
Let's see. Okay. So when it comes to the specific resources, having available grants and available funding, it doesn't take a ridiculous amount of funding. But we do take about $7,000, takes about $7,000 to run one of these a week. If you're trying to do it, you know, with all the bells and whistles and you know, inviting people to do workshops and all of that. And available grants are something I think, if you're in the US, might be a bit lacking on a municipal and federal level. We're in no shortage here in Iceland, here in Reykjavik specific, we're in no shortage of both like private and public grants. And so long as we've been able to justify it, we've been able to get access to those resources. Beyond that, a good private space that actually engages the kids and helps them feel like this is for me. Because it's one thing to take a community hall and be like, anime club. But if it's so closed off and so generic, it would be hard to make them connect with it. So everything from in the space that we have, everything from the aesthetic to the actual ways that we can close it off and open it up and stuff like that, are crafted specifically to engage these sort of kids. So if you're able to find that space or create that space, again, if you have the capital, that's really, really engaging. But most importantly, more than anything, what we've been very careful with is getting the right staff. I think that if you're doing this, you've got 3 people, you don't have any funding, you can buy a couple of snacks and you could put them in a single community hall once a week. It'll be difficult. But if you have people that have empathy and you have people that have understanding, because every time a kid comes up to us and says, I've been going through this, and this can be self-harm, this can be substance abuse, this can be parental problems, this can be isolation in school, I can always point to one of our staff members and say, this staff member has gone through something similar. Here, let me connect you to. Let's, you know how to talk about it. Like Hannah was talking about racism and isolation and being kind of an outsider. And we have a lot of POC kids that engage with us regularly. And being then to be able to have Hannah and be like, you're going through something that I personally don't understand, but Hannah might be able to. And that
yeah, I'm still currently working on that because the kids are, because like as Asian kids are, they are very quiet. But once you really chip away at the shell, they're gonna get really loud. Like one of our kids is a big example. You know who I'm talking about. So like, yeah.
And that's exactly the thing, is that it's able to create a deeper, intimate connection on a very primal level that the other things, having a good space, having money, is just not going to create, right? Like if you have a gigantic, great team space that a big company or like Microsoft or whatever, like a venture capitalist firm or something creates, but all they have is people that don't understand anime, is not going to do a diddly squat thing. It's eventually going to fizzle.
That's also the thing. Like, it's not just about understanding, like, it's not just about, oh, we're just big fans of anime. Like, we're just walking weebs in a library room, like, trying to get kids to do things to like paper, it's not just that. You really need to have also like a really strong, thick skin to really, like, I would say, you need to be mentally strong for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we can't just like hire people left and right.
No, exactly.
We need to like really know them.
Because these kids, they come because they're curious about what an anime club is, what it looks like, because maybe they have an interest, maybe it's their special interest. They come because of the anime, but they stay for the community. That's like the most important part, is that these kids feel like they belong somewhere and they belong in this space. So we were just kind of lucky to get like the physical space that we got, because it is really good.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is community and empathy, and for them to have somebody yeah, exactly, who has gone through similar things, who can empathize with them on a genuine level, and not like in a oh, but you're just like a kid, you know,
It's not
being
the
a kid,
meaning.
whatever, you know, it's gonna be fine. Like, no, being a child and being a teenager is very difficult. And although you get, you know, just reassuring them that they will get the tools to work with their emotions and to work in with their situations as they get older, it doesn't devalue the fact that they are struggling and that it doesn't just go away. You know, it's they need somebody who they can trust, who they can be reassured by and look up to.
Mhm.
See,
Not-
And yeah, sorry.
the thing that I really would like to point out, since it's almost a year since we opened Anime Club, this is just a good way to like kind of really put a really nice ending to this really cool chat. The first couple of months were like, oh, kids were like scattered around, right? Because it is such an Icelandic thing to be like, oh, I don't know this person, I'm gonna give them their space, and like, so that they're comfortable. And the kids obviously know this because it is such a prevalent thing in their culture. So the thing that I noticed after our little summer break, after we have parched the kids of content, we noticed that the kids all missed each other and have continued to like really communicate in Discord. And the sweetest thing that I could possibly like see in the anime club was, back then we had like separate tables for art supplies, and like there's like a little trolley you can go into and like grab your art stuff if you wanted to borrow something. Now all we needed to do was set up a big table, and all of the kids were like very noisy, and they're all talking to each other and very welcoming to the newcomers. Like, this was right after the summer break, and seeing that progression with these kids and how social they're being compared to the first time I've ever seen them was such a heartwarming thing. It was such a wholesome feeling of, oh, they're not here just for the pins so that they can get their anime merch that they could get somewhere else. They're actually here to like socialize and like show off what they were doing during the summer. And it's such a wholesome image where these kids are all like just in one table and not scattered around like back then. It was so sweet.
It's so reassuring to us also that they are finding community and they're finding friends whom they care about and can connect to on a genuine level. It's very sweet.
Yeah, I would definitely say that if you're interested in doing something like this, go ahead. I think it would, if you have that empathy and you have that patience and you're ready to deal with
a lot of patience. My God, these kids.
If you're ready to deal with some kids that that have a lot of real problems, and you're gonna need to like put some muscle into it and actually help them and email teachers and stuff like that and help them out.
Also, I'd like to just interrupt Atla right now and say, like, she has been like such a patient, like, little angel, because my fucking God, this woman right here, Jesus Christ, she likes to like really be humble and be like, oh, like every one of the staff has been so great and like we all do the stuff. No, like, listen, this woman right here has been like the one that's emailing the teachers or like talking to CPS if there's anything wrong with the kids. Like, my fucking God, I didn't even know someone can have like this much serious connection to like important people. And that is a big fucking thing, and this one really needs to have like her own recognition for it. And like, we do also really like to say that like Viktoria here is like so fucking patient with these kids, because she is like, everyone's like, oh, you're one of us, and she managed to like be like, no. I'm older than all of you.
I also want to give a shout out to one of our good staff members, Hannah, who's been able to really, really engage with us and engage with the kids. And let's not forget one of our most important staff members, Dante, who is over there right now.
Our puppy, the father of the very silent but watchful father of the
patriarch.
The patriarch.
Who does so much for the kids. A lot of like silent work. He'll just be using the pin machine for an entire day, and like making plans and pins and going with checklists and everything. It's wonderful, wonderful. I think that's why I try to be humble, is because I want to acknowledge the work of all of you that are doing great work and helping these kids in real, meaningful ways.